scared. I'm scared.
Right now, speaking out for the first time, Kaitlyn Hunt and her family pleading to keep that 18-year-old from being labeled a sex offender for a relationship with a 14-year-old schoolmate from Sebastian High.
The alleged victim's lawyer is talking tonight, too. That's all new, and Jeff Skripek is live in Sebastian with the story making national headlines. Jeff?
Well, Michael and Kelly, we're standing right outside Sebastian River High School. This is where investigators say this entire relationship began. Now, right now, 18-year-old Kaitlyn Hunt faces 2 felony charges of lewd and lascivious battery charges she's hoping are reduced. However, in speaking with the alleged victim's lawyer tonight, he says in his mind, justice needs to be served. Flanked by dozens of her supporters, 18-year-old Kaitlyn Hunt broke down at one point in front of reporters and was embraced by her mother and father.
I'm scared of losing my life, the rest of my life, not being able to go to college and be around kids and my sisters, my family.
If convicted of having a relationship with a 14-year-old girl, Hunt will have to register as a sex offender. Her lawyer, Julia Graves, is asking the charge to be reduced to a misdemeanor.
This is a life sentence for behavior by teenagers that is all too common, whether they are male or female, gay or straight. High school relationships may be fleeting, but felony convictions are forever.
Definitely overwhelming, to say the least. Scared. I'm scared. Just kind of hopeful for the best.
Right now, a plea deal is on the table that would include a charge of child abuse.
It takes into account the seriousness of the offense. It takes into account that it's a violation of Florida law, a second-degree felony, and that the plea offer allows her to enter a plea that she will not go to jail and she will not be labeled as a sex offender. And so there's no argument that her life is being ruined by this plea offer.
Charles Sullivan Jr. says the victim's family just wants there to be consequences for what's happened, insisting it has nothing to do with sexual orientation. As for how his client is doing,
not well at all. The entire event has been a significant trauma to her, to the family, to everyone involved.
As the Friday deadline to accept or reject the plea looms, Hunt has a message for all of her supporters.
I would just say thank you and just continue to keep supporting me and my family through this. And just thank you. That's all I would say.
Now, when we last spoke with the state attorney's office, prosecutors telling us they would not bend on that plea deal of the charge of child abuse. The Hunt family, meanwhile, has until Friday to accept or reject that plea deal. And then if they do, in fact, reject that plea deal, they will have to fight those 2 felony charges in court. Reporting live tonight in Sebastian, Jeff Skripek, WPTV News Channel 5.
Teenage girl charged with having sex with a 14-year-old schoolmate, another girl, and that is causing part of the problem. The case is raising a lot of questions, including whether the defendant is now being treated more harshly because of her sexual orientation. At just 19, Kaitlyn Hunt should be decorating a college dorm room. Instead, this morning, she's locked in a jail cell. The teen is awaiting trial in Florida, accused of having an inappropriate relationship with a fellow high school student. Hunt was 18 at the time. The other student, also a girl, was just 14, under the age of consent.
We don't have a comment at this time.
When the younger girl's parents reported the relationship in February, prosecutors charged Hunt with 2 counts of lewd and lascivious battery of a child. She was released on bond and told not to contact the girl. But on Tuesday, a judge revoked Hunt's bail after police say she did just that, allegedly exchanging 20,000 texts with the girl since her arrest. Many of them were explicit.
I also observed videos and pictures of Kaitlyn Hunt.
Hunt, seen here dressed in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, has yet to enter a plea, but her family and friends say they're convinced she's being singled out for being gay.
I don't think that either one of these girls thought that anything that they did was wrong. I certainly don't see her as a danger to the community.
But overnight, an attorney for the young victim says her family decided to report Hunt because of the age issue alone.
The disapproval had nothing to do with sexual orientation. There was sexual activity between a 14-year-old child and an 18-year-old adult. That's a violation of the law.
Adding to Hunt's troubles this morning, prosecutors are no longer offering a potential plea deal, meaning she could be labeled a sex offender and face up to 30 years in prison if convicted. ABC News spoke to Hunt's parents this spring about what they said they feared most.
the state attorney can spin it any way that they want to, but it's a death sentence for her. All of her goals will be unreachable.
Now, Kaitlyn Hunt did express in some of those text messages that she knew she could get in trouble for contacting the girl, but she did it anyway. Georgia, now she is behind bars.
She sure is. Let's bring in ABC's Chief Legal Affairs anchor Dan Abrams for more on this right now. First major mistake for Kaitlyn, those text messages.
Well, that's right. And also sending these allegedly lewd images, because she's now been charged with an additional crime. But I think there's another mistake here, and that is not accepting the plea deal, which would have given her probation. Now, some are saying, wait a sec, why should she accept this deal? Why? Because the Florida law is going to be really tough for her to deal with. Put aside whether you think she ought to have been prosecuted. The minute they indicted her, she's in big trouble here because of the law. Now, I happen to think that this Florida law is a little wacky. Why? Because a 23-year-old can legally have sex with a 16-year-old in the state of Florida, but not a senior and a freshman in high school.
And that gives the prosecutors very little discretion.
Well, that's right. So in all of these cases, put aside whether they're same sex, different sex, it's very often prosecuted because the younger person's parents call the authorities. And then they've got these laws in the vast majority of states where basically it says technically if you had sex with a minor, it doesn't matter, senior and freshman, you can be prosecuted. Once you get prosecuted, you're in big trouble.
So you don't think she's being singled out because it's a same-sex relationship?
I don't know. I don't know if they went after, I don't know if the family didn't like that. I don't know the answer to that question. I do know that now that she's been prosecuted, and this happens in other cases, in cases where you're not talking about same sex, where you get an 18-year-old and 14 or 15-year-old, and you get the 18-year-old prosecuted. It happens, and it very often happens because the parents report it. So at this point, I don't think she's being treated differently because it's same sex. Whether she was initially prosecuted because of that, you'd have to dig in with the family members, et cetera, to talk about that.
Okay, Dan Abrams, thanks very much.